My heart shattered when a grieving widower paid double to save a woman sold after birth. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air was thick with grief and desperation. I stood there, breathless, as whispers wafted through the crowd like a chilling breeze. It felt surreal, almost like a twisted nightmare. I couldn't wake up from. In that moment, I saw him. A man broken, lost in his own world of sorrow. His face, weary and pale, told stories of love lost too soon. He clutched a crumpled envelope, shaking hands revealing his raw emotion. It tugged at me, a pitiful sight, yet magnetic. My heart raced, thrumming loudly in my chest, every beat a reminder of the weight of his pain. What moved him to such drastic action? I needed to know. My eyes darted around, taking in the onlookers' hushed voices and gasps of disbelief. People were staring, frowning, circling like vultures around a wounded animal. How could this happen? No one seemed to have answers. Only more questions, each more troubling than the last. That I could feel the heartbeat of the crowd. The tension electrified the air as he raised his voice, cracking like glass, demanding the impossible. A woman shackled by fate, sold merely a breath after her birth. Her life, her future, reduced to a price tag. The selling block, a merciless stage for a desperate bid for freedom. I shivered, realizing the reality beneath the surface. Was this all a cruel game to some? While they watched, he fought as if this was the only salvation left for him. I could see the turmoil in his eyes, a desperate search for hope amidst despair. The world around us faded as we stood suspended in that moment, and all that remained was raw, aching longing. Hope flickered, a fragile candle in the darkest night. What if he were to win her freedom? The crowd swayed with anticipation, some hopeful, many doubtful, but no one dared to move. The silence was palpable. I felt it tightening around us like a noose. Each second stretched painfully thin. Then, the auctioneer's voice sliced through the tension, cold and clinical. 10,000, 20, 30. The numbers kept climbing, and the man's resolve seemed tethered to desperation. What kind of life would they give her? Could love conquer the chains of a cruel world? His hands trembled even more, but I saw determination spark in his eyes. It wasn't just about buying her freedom. It was about something deeper. The weight of his grief hung heavy in the air. Yet there was a flicker of determination, a moment of clarity that perhaps, just perhaps, he could rewrite the ending. But then it happened. A figure emerged from the shadows, a rival from the past. His presence cast a dark, ominous cloud over the moment. Muffled gasps filled the air as everyone froze, uncertainty cutting like glass. I caught my breath, heart racing. Who was this man? What did he want? Like an unfinished symphony, I stood on the precipice of revelation and despair. My chest tightened with unease. I needed answers. I couldn't turn away now. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The crowd seemed to shrink, closing in around me as I grasped the true weight of the moment. The man's rival, whose face cloaked in shadows, let out a sly, unsettling chuckle. It echoed through the hushed space, a taunt that sent shivers down my spine. I dared to believe that the grieving widower had the strength to confront this specter of his past, yet dread coiled in my stomach, twisting painfully. Oh, you really think you can save her? The rival sneered, stepping forward, his form becoming more defined in the harsh light of the nearby lanterns. A fool's errand, my friend. This is no battle built on memories but on the harsh reality of today. That I dared to shift my gaze back to the widower, hoping to see strength blossoming within him. Yet what I found instead was a moment of sheer vulnerability. For the first time, I saw the cracks beneath his facade, the burgeoning fear of failure, the looming shadow of loss that had once seemed so distanced. But hope is a stubborn thing. Just as I thought despair might swallow him whole, a small child from the crowd tugged at her mother's skirts. "Mama, look! He cares. He's trying to save her," she exclaimed, her bright eyes shining against the darkness enveloping the adults around her. The innocence in her voice pierced through, bringing a flicker of light into the oppressive atmosphere. The widower turned ever so slightly at the sound, his gaze following the child briefly. It was as if the weight of the world had shifted just enough for a breath of relief. He squared his shoulders, aligning his heart to the call of the child. Maybe it wasn't just about the life of the woman bound in chains, but also about the lives that still held hope in their beating hearts. Don't you see? He shouted back to the rival, his voice growing steadier. It's not just about the money. This isn't a game to me. She deserves more than scraps from the table. She deserves a chance. The crowd murmured in agreement, a wave of instinctive unity building, igniting a flicker of courage within him. Deserves a chance? The rival scoffed, rolling his eyes, his smirk disdainful. You think that will matter in a world that heartlessly divides lives by wealth? Even if you somehow win her freedom, what will you do next? You can't bring back what's lost. His words stung, seeping into the atmosphere like poison. I could see the flicker of doubt reignite in the widower's eyes, threatening to extinguish the flame of resolve he had just nurtured. It was all too brutal, unfolding before us, a cruel theater that taunted our hearts. How could he fight a battle where victory felt beyond reach? But before the despair could descend like a storm cloud, the little girl blurted, "But love is the most powerful thing ever." Like my mama said. She clutched a worn book, a story of heroes and brave hearts, holding it up as if it were a sacred talisman. The simplicity of her faith snagged at something deep within the crowd, stirring a ripple of resilience. Suddenly, an elderly woman who had been standing near the front spoke up, her voice shaking but firm. "You fight for what's right, not for the things money can buy," she called out, her withered face full of compassion. The crowd shifted, energized with this unexpected kindness, a tide of voices echoing her sentiment, urging him on. "Yes, fight for her," they chorused, and I felt the atmosphere crackle with something indescribable, a fragile, new thread of possibility weaving through the heaviness. The widower took a breath, gathering the strength bestowed upon him by the hearts around him. "You're right," he said, his voice resonating with conviction. "Losing everything doesn't mean I can't fight it all back." And as he uttered those words, I saw something shift within him, the rebirth of purpose as powerful as a storm. Yet, as the rival regarded him with eye-rolling disdain, what lay beyond that exchange was far more sinister. He turned just slightly, allowing the shadows to cloak part of his features. "You think your brave words can save you? Just wait until nightfall." With that veiled threat, he melted into the crowd, leaving a trail of unease behind him. The tension shifted, but hope remained. The widower clenched his fists, absorbing the warmth radiating from the kindred spirits surrounding him. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this was merely the eye of the storm, a deceptive calm before a tempest. As darkness began to cloak the marketplace, I realized then that the true battle had yet to begin. The emotions churned within me, swirling and colliding, bringing forth a chaotic anticipation. This moment felt pivotal, a meeting of light and shadow, desperate and determined hearts, teetering on a knife's edge. Then, suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the entrance of the square, and gasps erupted as the crowd turned in unison. A figure appeared, stepping into the light, their demeanor authoritative yet shrouded in mystery. My breath caught in my throat, my heartbeat quickening as a shocking revelation sliced through the air. The newcomer bore the same crumpled emblem as the widowers. Was it really possible that fate had intertwined their stories once more? The question hung heavy still with unspoken truths, and I couldn't help but realize answers would only breed more questions in a world riddled with pain and hope living side by side, curled poignantly like the petals of a wilting flower. The air hung thick with anticipation as the figure stepped forward, a blend of concern and resolve etched into the unfamiliar features. I could feel the crowd shift, murmurs grazing the surface of our collective anxiety, whispering how fate had a particularly cruel sense of humor. The emblem, crumpled yet undeniably recognizable, became the centerpiece of our shared bewilderment. "Is that?" A voice pierced through the veil of confusion, trailing off into silence as uncertainty gripped the onlookers. The widower's expression morphed, a cocktail of confusion and recognition playing on his face. The once invigorated flame of determination flickered, casting shadows of doubt once more. Nightfall has come too soon. The newcomer spoke, their voice a rich tapestry of authority and tenderness. But I come with news and purpose, not malice. They held up a hand, silencing the growing murmurings. I am here to help. How can we trust you? The rival's voice rang out, cutting like a blade through the fragile air. The sentiment echoed, draped in apprehension. Because I understand what's at stake, they replied, eyes unwavering, holding the whole crowd captive with the weight of their conviction. I once stood where you are now, desperate to save someone who seemed lost forever. The widower's fists clenched tighter, a storm brewing behind the shield of his composure. What do you know of loss? He challenged, his voice trembling with barely contained anguish. The newcomer exhaled, vulnerability breaking through their bravado. More than you can imagine. I was a fool once, blinded by pride, and it cost me dearly. I let love slip through my fingers. Their eyes softened in apparent remembrance, and for a moment, it was as if the entire crowd caught a glimpse of the scars that marred their soul. Your words mean nothing if you cannot help, the rival spat, desperation crackling in the tense atmosphere. You just seek personal redemption. Yes, perhaps, but that does not erase the truth that I stand here for you, and for her. She deserves to be seen not as a commodity, but as a human being. The newcomer's gaze moved towards the shadow of the woman held captive beyond the market, as if her very existence demanded answers to questions unasked. What are you offering? The widower's voice was low yet charged with curiosity. The crowd hushed, drawn into the gravity of the moment. A partnership. The newcomer stepped closer, their intentions seemingly genuine. I can help you navigate the treacherous waters of this fight, offer resources and allies. The rival chuckled mockingly, but there was uncertainty creeping into his form as he stepped back. Perhaps he could sense the tide shifting, the heartstrings of the crowd tightening. And what's the catch? Only that you put aside your fear of losing both of her and yourself. This battle won't be easy, but it's one worth fighting, I assure you, the newcomer declared, eyes alight with fierce conviction. The widower hesitated, a tumult of emotion washing over him as the weight of every choice bore down on his shoulders. Around him, the crowd began to murmur, the seed of hope swelling amid the tension, but I sensed the storm still raged beneath. Yet, just as he appeared to weigh his options, a sudden rumbling shook the ground beneath us. People staggered backwards, fear igniting the air like dry kindling. The rival's eyes flashed with a wicked gleam. You think this is a game? You think your noble hearts can withstand the truth awaiting all of you tonight? Before anyone could respond, a loud crack echoed, causing the lanterns to flicker violently, throwing jagged shadows across the market. A heavy darkness enveloped the square as the newcomer turned toward the demonic shadow looming in the distance. Protect her, they shouted, but before I could comprehend the full meaning of their urgency, the thrumming weight of despair fell upon the crowd like a stone plunging into a deep reservoir of pain. The widower's face paled, a mixture of dread and determination washing over him. We want back down, he cried, his heart hammering against the walls of his chest. As the air crackled with tension, panic set in. The crowd began to scatter, voices swirling into chaos as rumors of a new threat emerged from the darkness. I caught sight of the little girl, still clutching her sacred book, her wide eyes shimmering with innocence and fear. My heart sank. Stay close, I shouted, reaching for her hand, my instincts guiding me as the ground trembled once more. But just as I grasped her tiny palm, the rival sneered, disappearing into the swirling shadows with an unsettling smile. In that shattering moment, as uncertainty surged and hope wavered, I felt the world tilt violently towards chaos. And amidst the darkened skies and the threat of what lay ahead, I understood. This battle was only the whisper of the storm, and the worst was yet to come. The distant echoes of fear dissipated as shadows loomed larger, smothering us with a tangible weight of dread. In the chaos, I could feel the little girl's grip tightening around my fingers, her heartbeat resonating like a war drum against my palm. The new ally faced the encroaching darkness, their silhouette defiant against the onslaught. Surrounding us, the crowd's energy fluctuated, a raw mix of panic and misguided valor. Each person grappling with their haunted pasts and uncertain futures, gather together. The newcomer shouted, their voice booming, cutting through the oppressive air like a blade. We must form a united front against what comes. Do not let fear conquer our hearts. The widower turned, determination igniting his gray eyes, glimpsing the hesitation that gripped the faces around him. They are counting on us. If we yield now, we lose not just her, but everything we hold dear. His words, far from a mere rally, transformed into an echo of the collective suffering we all carried. The small community had borne countless trials together. Kinship could sprout even in the barren soil of despair. I witnessed hesitation morph into resolve, hearts beginning to beat as one. When the widower's gaze fell on the girl at my side, "Stay with her," he commanded, urgency threading his tone. "Help her, protect her. She's the light we cannot afford to lose." As he rushed toward the forefront of the gathering, I turned my attention fully to the little girl, her bright eyes melting with unspoken fears. "It's going to be all right," I whispered, brushing back strands of hair that fell across her face. "We won't let anything happen to you. Just stay close." The girl's nod was tentative, but there was an ember of courage flickering in her spirit. In a world where innocence felt like a mere flicker against an all-consuming darkness, her bravery washed over me, igniting my own resolve. The shadows moved ever closer, but I would not let despair win today. Around us, voices entwined in a muted symphony of encouragement. Strangers became allies, huddling together. Someone cleared their throat, no doubt steeling themselves, and began to chant a comforting song, a melody echoing generations long buried. The tune wrapped around me, a balm for frayed nerves, and I found myself joining in, my voice mingling with the others despite the knot of fear in my throat. As the chilling shadows rolled inward, the newcomer brandished a torch they had somehow procured, the flickering flame illuminating a trail against the impending darkness. "We will take a stand," they shouted, their grip firm and resolute around the handle. "Face the fear together. For every light extinguished, we will spark 10 more." Hope surged through the thrumming crowd as we inched forward, shields of unity and spirit fortifying our resolve against the encroaching night. But just as exhilaration and dread intermingled, a clash erupted somewhere beyond the flickering lanterns, a cry that sliced through the chorus, wrenching our collective breath from our chests. "Finding her won't matter if we lose everything else," the rival's derisive voice echoed from the shadows, taunting as if basking in our uncertainty. Then, new figures began to emerge. A wave of mercenaries materialized from the dark, faces twisted into cruel exuberance. Their gleaming weapons danced ominously in the half-light, foreboding harbingers of destruction. Each step they took sent icy fingers crawling up my spine. In that moment, the embers of courage felt fleeting, slipping through my fingers as panic threatened to drown us whole. The mantra we chanted faltered, swallowed by the sudden gravity of despair that filled the air. Around me, eyes widened in fear, comprehension dawning like a storm cloud. "Run." The command sliced through the dim light, but the words clawed back our unity instead of scattering it. The widower stood tall at the front. I saw the way his jaw clenched, the furious resolve that anchored him amongst the terror. "We can't let them have her without a fight." Just then, I caught a glimpse of the distant woman, a flicker of motion against the tangle of bodies. She was alive, hope flickering, but not for long. "Stay," I shouted at the small girl, feeling the weight of the moment crash over me. I released her shaking hand and rushed toward the chaos, determined to reclaim the light before it dimmed entirely. The crowd's unyielding chorus of fear morphed into righteous fury, sparked by desperation, fueled by hope. A collective decision was made as hearts beat together in defiance. The little girl's clutch, now lost in the sea of shattering confidence, lay heavy on my mind. But she lingered on the periphery of my awareness, holding tight to her sacred book, and in that very instant, a towering figure moved to block my path, wielding shadows as weapons. The rival's eyes glinted with a manic glee that chilled my resolve. "You think you can save her? You think any of you stand a chance against what they offer? Watch me," I cried, as I faced the shadows, unwilling to succumb to despair any longer. The light of the torch flickered brighter in my vision, yet I felt the darkness gnawing at the edges of my resolve. Suddenly, I heard the distant echo of the child's voicey and isolated whisper, laced with fear, yet edged with something unforgettable. "They'll take my mother." At that moment, the ground felt steep beneath my feet as realization cascaded over me like a storm. The stakes shifted painfully, and the shattering truth unraveled in my chest. The woman held captive was more than just a stranger. She was someone woven into the very fabric of our shared existence. Clarity ignited urgency, spurring me into action as the remnants of hope flickered like a faraway star, resistant yet obscured by the growing shadow. I would fight for that light, for the child's mother, and for every soul lost in the tides of despair. And then I faced the night, aware that our greatest battles had just begun. The bitter chill of the encroaching darkness wrapped around me like a suffocating fog, every pulse of my heart resolute against the dread that threatened to swamp us all. The rivals' taunting words echoed in my mind, pricking the surface of our fragile hope. The realization of the little girl's connection pierced deeper than I could have anticipated. Her mother's face suddenly leaped into view, filled with life, laughter, and warmed the beacon I could not allow to flicker out. As I pressed forward with an urgency I couldn't fully comprehend, the scene erupted around me. The light from the torch illuminated the fear and fury etched into the faces of those caught in the swell. I realized we weren't just fighting for survival. We were wrestling with our fragmented pasts and uncertain futures, fighting to reclaim the light we once lost. Together, I shouted, my voice strong against the tide of despair that threatened to wash over us. Those around me refocused, some stepping forward, drawn by a shared purpose that surged through the crowd. Their solidarity wrapped around me, bolstering my strength like wind at my back. The widower's fierce determination stood at the forefront, his bravery amplifying our collective will. "Protect her," he cried, forcing his way through the mercenaries, the fear of failure igniting a fierce energy in his eyes. But as they advanced, accusations and chaos intermingled with screams. Each revelation about the woman became an anchor, a tether keeping us bound and resolute even amid the turmoil. Together, we could confront the darkness. My heart raced, fueled by a growing flame of camaraderie. Even as my mind whirled with the implications of what lay ahead, in the thick of the fray, I felt a sudden brush against my shoulder. I turned, startled to find an elderly woman whose face reflected the knowledge of myriad battles lost and won. "We can't falter now," she urged. "Sometimes hope lies beyond the reach of shadows." Her words were like kindling to my spirit, and I clung to them even as doubt threatened to steal them away. The mercenaries surged forward, weapons raised, a moving wall of malice. I fought back despair as I maneuvered closer to the front lines, reaching for a fallen weapon at my feet, a sharpened stick, barely functional, but still a means of defense. From somewhere behind me, I heard the little girl's soft chant, a song her mother had once sung. Its melody seeped into the tumult, stitching together our half-shattered intentions as it drifted even through the din of conflict. Each word that escaped her lips felt like a spell woven to repel the darkness, bringing the flicker of courage back to our hearts. I turned, catching her small form in my periphery, her grip adjusting firm on the sacred book in her hands, her essence a lighthouse in the chaos. But the tide of cruelty surged once more. A mercenary's arm swung low, and I barely ducked in time, the blade slicing through the air where my head had been moments before. Adrenaline coursed through my veins as I managed a volley of thrusts with my makeshift weapon, each connection between wood and flesh a desperate scream against the inevitable. Then, as I seized a moment, a beam of light pierced through the encroaching shadow, strike not from the torch, but from the flailing crowd beside the widower. It came from the new ally, a figure weaving through the fray with newfound determination, summoning patriotism amongst their fellows. "Stay strong," they cried, racing toward the edges of the chaos. Just then, the grotesque grin of the rival caught my eye again, a malevolent gaze fixed on the girl. "You can't protect what you cannot save," he bellowed, using his words like a weapon. "She is destined for another life, one you are not part of." In that moment, my heart clenched, fear sharpening into something unforgiving. Straightening, I summoned every ounce of conviction, ready to respond, when suddenly the rival's cruel laugh resonated through the night, bringing everything around us to a haunting stillness. "Didn't you know?" he taunted, his voice a snake's hiss. "She is the bargain that will redeem all of you." Time stilled as those around me processed the enormity of his words. I met the eyes of the widower, his fierce resolve still evident, but now overshadowed by a flicker of uncertainty. Would we be fighting not only to save the little girl's mother, but also for the child herself? The stakes had shifted, potentially entangling our own fates within the snare of darkness that I shook my head, disbelief mingling with rage. "You're lying." I forced myself to shout, needing to deflate the weight of his words. We would never sacrifice our own for fear of what happens next, but the rival's laughter echoed, both chilling and triumphant. Sacrifice is but a path to survival, and when the darkness falls, only the strongest will rule. Around us, uncertainty thickened like a fog, creeping into our once assertive resolve. The minds of my companions began to twist, caught in the web that he spun, and my heart fell. What if hope was just another illusion, one that withered under the cold gaze of reality? What if the price for mercy was ultimately betrayal? Then came a scream, brittle against the silence that had fallen. The little girl, standing on the outskirts of chaos, her expression caught between horror and conviction, shouted, "No, you're wrong. Love is stronger than fear." Her voice dove through the tumult, igniting something deep within each of us. We rallied around her. The mercenaries lurked with greedy disdain, shadows that promised to snuff out our flickers of strength. In that moment, I felt a surge of shared humanity, a need to protect this light that radiated from the little girl, despite the gnawing dread consuming us. But then, as we stood our ground, the rival's face transformed, dark satisfaction settling into his features. "Find her mother or perish," he spat, before vanishing back into the depths of shadow, leaving us with the haunting weight of the ultimatum hanging in the air. I caught my breath, the oppression thickening around us. I realized we were caught in a game far beyond our understanding. The battle had taken on new meaning, a battle not solely for our lives, but for the essence of who we were together. And as the first cries of dawn threatened to slip behind the horizon, I felt the realization settle heavily upon my heart. Whatever lay ahead, our fight was only just beginning. As the shadows of the night receded with the looming dawn, an unease settled over the group like a low-hanging fog. We stood together, still trembling from the chaos, yet drawn closer by a shared purpose. The little girl beside me, her wide eyes shimmering, clutched her sacred book tightly against her chest, embodying the fragile spark of hope we all desperately needed. "Every dawn holds a secret. You just need to listen," she whispered, her voice cracking with an energy that defied her youth. It was a soothing balm draped over our frayed nerves. I knelt to her level, compelled by the depth in her gaze, and asked, "What do we do now? How do we find your mother?" Her small hand reached out, brushing against my arm as if trying to convey a connection deeper than words. "We fight for her," she replied, simple and profound. The frailty of her tone masked the weight of responsibility she bore. "But we must also show them kindness. We can't let fear lead us, not ever." A sliver of warmth cut through my hesitation, igniting a small ember of determination within me. As serious as the stakes were, perhaps our path lay not just in facing the rival and his mercenaries, but also in rediscovering our own humanity, fractured though it had become. "We can't lose sight of who we are," I encouraged the others, raising my voice to cut through the atmosphere thick with uncertainty. "For every act of cruelty, we must respond with kindness. We'll seek the hearts of those who've lost their way." A few of the fighters nodded. I could see the resolve returning, a flicker igniting in their eyes. The widower stepped forward, his chiseled features softened by the first light of dawn. "I won't abandon my fight for her mother," he declared fiercely, yet his voice twisted with an undercurrent of worry. "But what if we lose her too in this struggle?" I felt the weight of his grief, the remnants of hope threatened by the cruel game being played. "We can't allow fear to dictate our actions," I replied, my own uncertainty creeping in. "The grief of losing loved ones binds us, but holding on to love will keep us alive." The little girl's gaze moved to the horizon, her fragile dreams spilling forth. "Love can find a way," she repeated, her voice lifting with promise as she pointed toward a flickering light on the far edge of the clearing. "That'll guide us. I know it will." Her conviction was infectious, softening the edges of fear clinging around me. We gathered closely once more, forming a hesitant circle that began to glow with renewed purpose. Gradually, each person shared their own memories and aspirations, resurrecting pieces of their lives long lost to shadows. The commitment to each other felt tangible, as if our intertwined destinies wove an invisible thread connecting us all. And so, we began our trek toward the flickering light. Each step felt heavy, imbued with the weight of our stories and the tension of our unspoken fears. What lay ahead remained a mystery. We moved cautiously through the remnants of the dawn, winding our way through trees that appeared to sigh with the late night's burden. My heart raced within the confines of my chest, trepidation dancing hand in hand with an unshakable grit. "Together, we can conquer this," I whispered under my breath, hoping to turn my own anxiety into motivation. In the stillness, a rustle disrupted the solemn air, and I held my breath, instinctively reaching for the crude weapon I had taken earlier. From the thicket emerged a figure whom I initially thought was another mercenary, until a flash of recognition sent shivers down my spine. It was a herbalist, one I had seen before in the marketplace, her long cloak flowing around her as if she were still grounded to its roots. "I was searching for you," she said breathlessly, humbling us with her presence. "They say whispers of your bravery can conquer the dark. How did you find us?" I stammered, still wary, yet intrigued by her timing. "There are eyes and ears everywhere," she replied, dropping her voice. "And those who know loss are also those who can be reached. You must take me to the girl. Her spirit shines brighter than any candle." The little one stepped closer, looking up at the herbalist with trust. "Will you help find my mother?" she asked, her innocence breaking through the tension that hung in the air. "Yes," the herbalist nodded, her eyes reflecting the girl's hope. "But to start, we need to rally others, those who know the balance of love and fear, who have escaped the rival's grasp. We will need the strength of many to face what lies ahead." My heart surged at the prospect of aid. "How do we do that?" "By spreading kindness," the herbalist replied, resolve sharpening her features. "We become the warmth that dispels the chill, a network of connections that feasts on love, and well call those who've suffered under the rival's ruled. As we stood there in the growing light of day, possibility igniting our souls, I caught a glimpse of a nearby cottage far in the distance. "Let's start there," I urged, adrenaline and hope roaring through my veins. However, just as the words left my lips, a low rumble of laughter echoed through the trees, chilling the moment like a harbinger of doom. The rival's voice cut through the portion of rising joy, laced with mockery. "You really think you can save her, don't you?" My stomach twisted in dread. It was clear we were not as alone as we had hoped. "You think kindness will save you?" he sneered, appearing at the edge of the clearing with an entourage of mercenaries, an ominous formation heralding darkness. Sweat dripped from my brow as I felt the weight of despair clawing back, desperate to sink its claws into our moment of hope. Just as my world began to spiral toward despair, my heartbeat thundered louder, fueled by the determination to stand together once more. But that flicker of hope faltered when the rival raised something in his gloved hand, something that gleamed ominously under the morning sun, the little girl's mother's necklace. In that instant, dread twisted in my gut, and I realized the stakes were higher than I imagined. We had to act. The love we clung to was now an anchor heavy with gravity, and the price of freedom loomed, threatening to snuff out even this fragile light we had nurtured in our hearts. As the mercenaries fanned out around us, cloaked in a suffocating aura of menace, I felt the air thickening with an insidious tension. The rival's grin widened, a chilling tableau of triumph as he toyed with the jewelry dangling from his fingers like a spider ensnaring its prey. My heart raced, each beat conspiring against me, urging me to act, yet my body remained frozen in a mix of fear and disbelief. "Stop!" The little girl's voice rang out, echoing across the clearing, cutting through the impending shroud of despair like a shard of glass. "You can't take my mother from me. She's not yours to sell." I watched in awe as her bravery surged, standing as the lone figure of defiance against the overpowering machinations of the rival. Her fearlessness ignited a flicker of resolve in the others, a fervent pledge to not allow this moment to extinguish our fought for hope. The rivals' laughter crashed over us, cruel and retching. And what can you possibly provide in the face of such power? You believe in kindness? In love? Those are merely chains binding the weak. He tossed the necklace into the air, tauntingly, and it gleamed brightly against the sun before landing at the feet of the nearest mercenary. No. The girl cried, her voice breaking as she lunged forward, but I gripped her hand, pulling her back, sensing the tempest brewing. We can't let him bait us. We're stronger together, I murmured, trying to instill a modicum of courage into her trembling frame. The herbalist stepped forward, emboldened. You think power lies in wielding fear? She challenged, her voice firm. True strength derives from our community, our willingness to unite against tyranny. The group shifted uneasily, glancing between our agitated leader and the looming mercenaries. I sensed their uncertainty, mirroring my own, as we faced a foe who had crafted his life out of suffering. Yet, the herbalist's words echoed in my mind, refueling the fire we all needed to sustain. Listen, I raised my voice, allowing a teetering authority to seep in. He underestimates us. Each of us carries the weight of loss-off love, and through that, we can light the path back to one another. We can be the warmth. But the rival merely waved a dismissive hand, a charade of power, deadening the moment with his indifference. Enough of your delusions. You'll find no solace here, only pain. He leaned into his menacing smirk, revealing teeth too sharp to belong to someone who ever bore kindness. I am the harbinger of darkness. Welcome to your reckoning. An electric jolt pulsed through me. I glanced toward the little girl, her pale face blossoming with a mixture of fear and defiance, then back at the sound of her mother's jewelry as it lay vulnerable beneath the boot of a mercenary. At that moment, an idea sparked an audacious flicker. If we have to fight, let it be for something more than just ourselves. The words fell from my lips, laced with a shaky courage. Let's lure him to the cottage. We can craft our revenge not through violence, but with our own ingenuity. A dissonant murmur rippled through our small band. What are you suggesting? Asked the widower, bewilderment casting a shadow over his brow. What if we use the necklace as bait? I proposed, feeling the sparking ember of hope kindle further in my chest. We know he is driven by greed. His control relies on that. Let's construct a scenario where he would think he has an advantage, and we lead him to the cottage. The flicker of determination crossed the widower's face, his mouth setting into a firm line. Gathering our resources there could give us the element of surprise, he mused, his brow furrowing as the gears turned. Exactly. If we can rally the villagers willing to resist, the herbalist added, her eyes now ablaze with the fire of our communal spirit, we can bolster our stance. It may be our only chance. That I felt my heart race as glimmers of something more profound shimmered within the group's belief. Resilience blossomed in the shadows of fear, binding us together in a shared struggle that underlined our humanity. But just as we began to formulate our escape plan, the rival interrupted with a sharp bark of laughter. This is rich. You truly believe you can outsmart me? He pulled a long dagger from under his cloak, reflecting the light menacingly. Know this. Every moment you waste is another your loved ones pay for. My throat constricted, memories flooding my mind, aching with the sheer weight of grief from lost experiences. I felt the losses we shared, not just the tangible lives snatched away, but the love we would never know, shared triumphs turned sorrowful. Together, I repeated under my breath, scrambling back to my feet. Before I could utter another plan, a cacophony of noise erupted from behind the rival's mercenaries. The twang of a bowstring pulled taut startled them, a flash of arrows raining in like shooting stars, striking the earth like weighted promises. We sprung in alarm, hearts pounding, as ragged figures emerged from the trees. Not all mercenaries were aligned with the rival's cruel ambition. Surprise, traitor! Roared a voice I recognized, sending shockwaves of disbelief through me as realization dawned. It was the old blacksmith from the village, rallying those once lost to despair, the young, the old, even some of the very courageous souls captured in fear. Yet as their purpose became clearer, my heart plummeted like a stone dropped into a dark abyss, when I caught a glimpse of a lone figure dragged forward against their will. Please, a desperate voice pierced through the rising chaos. I will pay, double, let her go. The widower's face paled as he stared directly at the pleading form of a woman beneath the grip of the rival's men. And despite the shards of hope woven within our fragile coalition, with dread and disbelief washing over us, I comprehended the devastating reality of a hidden sacrificia realization that we could yet lose everything. The scene erupted into bedlam, chaos suddenly enveloping us as the villagers surged into the clearing. Shouts and gasps intertwined, mingling with the penetrating cries of the mercenaries, who were wholly caught off guard. The bowstrings' twang echoed defiantly, and for a moment, it felt like fate had swayed in our favor. But that moment was fleeting. Overpowering dread pulled me back into the grim reality of our predicament. "Get her out of here," the blacksmith shouted, his old body moving with surprising agility as he dodged a mercenary's deft attempts to seize him. I watched in disbelief as villagers began to rally around our newfound ally. The thrill of hope surged through me, but was quickly stifled when I turned my gaze back to the rival, whose expression twisted from bemused disbelief to cold fury. "You dare defy me?" he bellowed, raising his dagger menacingly. His men quickly regrouped, preparing to retaliate against our bolstered ranks. The rival's gaze snapped to the widower, whose face grew pale as he took in the sight of the woman being dragged toward an uncertain footer, eyes wide with fear as she called to him, a pleading whisper that shattered the air. "I'll pay," he cried again, the desperation in his voice carving into the chaos like a knife. "Let her go. Take whatever you want from me. Just don't hurt her." In that instant, my heart felt as if it splintered into shards, each piece cutting deeper than the last. The reality of his plea, the weight of his grief seeped into my bones. This was more than a fight for survival. This was a man prepared to sacrifice everything, even his last shred of dignity, for love. It ignited both admiration and sorrow in me, a painful reminder of the cost of our choices. As the rival considered his offer, the sound of battle echoed around usuros finding their mark, cries for help, and the chaos of our struggle. It was in this turmoil that I spotted the little girl again. She now stood rooted at my side, wide-eyed and trembling. Despite the frantic world around us, a fierce determination washed over me as I knelt, grasping her shoulders gently. "Listen to me," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my chest. "We cannot lose sight of what is worth fighting for. You remember your mother's smile, how it lit up the darkest days. We must fight for that. We can't surrender hope." Her gaze galvanized me. I saw something flicker in her expression, a flicker of the luminescence that could burn through our collective despair. For a fleeting moment, I believe she understood the importance of unity and the kind of bravery that loves fiercely even amidst the throes of fear. That my focus returned to the rival, who was still weighing his options, savoring our distress. "You should remember," he hissed, "every transaction carries its price." He leaned in closer, his malevolence palpable. "And for every moment you delay, that price multiplies." Around us, villagers braced themselves, their resources gathering as they converged on those caught up in this cruel game. The old blacksmith bellowed once more, rallying his makeshift army. Yet, suddenly, a panicked scream ripped through the air. It drew my attention back to the widower, where the rival's men had encircled him, flashing weapons and sneering at his palpable agony. "We don't have time," I urged, my heart racing. When I spotted the dagger glinting maliciously in the fading light, I took a step closer, compelled by an instinct stronger than fear. "If you let her go," I shouted, "we will fight alongside you. We can overthrow him together." The rival's eyes narrowed, assessing me as if I had become a mere pawn in his cruel game. "And why would I trust a child's pitiful plea?" he mocked. But moments later, he pointed his dagger at the widower, who was still shouting for the woman. "Make it worth it, or you might witness her demise. The choice is yours." The air around us crackled, burdened by despair and unrelenting stakes. It twisted like a knife in my heart. This was not merely about defeating a rival, but about lives hanging by a thread in the balance. I glanced at the villagers, their expressions steeled with determination, yet wavering with fear. How much hope could we truly muster against such insurmountable odds? But as I turned back to face the rival, breaths held in anticipation, I was struck by a terrifying realization. The little girl, the embodiment of our shared strength, had crept toward the edge of the clearing. Her small fist clutched something tightly. I couldn't let her make a move. She was too innocent for this chaos. Wait, I shouted, but my voice was drowned by the howling winds. The girl raised her fist upward, her small form illuminated by the dying light of day as she shouted something incomprehensible, sheer rage and defiance radiating from her small frame before the dagger suddenly pierced through the air. All I could do was watch in horror, the unfolding tragedy unfurling before my paralyzed heart like a cruel dance, threading a path to a revelation that would change everything. My world narrowed around that singular moment, teetering on the precipice of fate, caught in one horrifying breath. The shrill sound of the girl's voice echoed in my ears as if desperate for recognition, but what followed was a dark stillness that choked the air, stealing the breath from my lungs. I watched in disbelief as she launched the object in her hand, the small stone, nothing more than a child's token of bravery toward the rival. Expectations crumbled as her innocent act was swallowed by the chaos of the fight. As the stone struck the ground near the mercenary leader's feet, a collective gasp rose from the crowd, abruptly diverting attention from the true source of danger, the rival. In that fleeting moment, he turned, the dagger wavering in his grip, giving us a brief window, an unexpected chance for clarity amidst the chaos. My heart raced. Perhaps this was the opening we needed to seize our freedom from his menacing clutches. Now, I shouted, urging the villagers forward. Adrenaline coursed through my veins as their resolve surged once more. Hope was fragile but powerful, igniting actions and words that had been tamed by fear for far too long. Striding forward, I grasped the cold, hard truth of the situation. If we were to win this, we needed more than sheer numbers, we needed strategy. Yet in that brief diversion, I felt an unsettling sensation creeping into my bones. The rival had regained his composure, sharp fury igniting in his eyes. "You insolent fools," he spat, his voice dripping with disdain. "You think a child's bravado can save you?" His mercenaries rallied with him, their weapons slick with intent, the air once again electric with the promise of violence. I glanced at the widower who had grown still, despair etched into his features. How was he still standing, caught in the web of his grief? The woman's cries echoed in my mind, a dagger struck deep with every frantic syllable. As the villagers pressed forward, I searched for some inkling of strength in the widower's face. "We can save her," I yelled over the din. "Remember why we're fighting." His eyes flickered, caught somewhere between hope and resignation. But just then, the rival unleashed a cruel laugh. "Save her?" He leaned forward, eyes gleaming with malicious delight. "This is a game of offers and betrayals. What of that woman?" He pointed disdainfully toward the woman trapped in the cluster of mercenaries, struggling against her captors. "She is worth far more than a few brave words. Do any of you even know what you sacrifice?" The weight of his words struck like an icy wind across my heart. "What do you want from us?" I demanded, my voice trembling with the enormity of his twisted proposition. "Everything," he replied, the grin on his face widening with each word that slipped from his lips. "And in this game, I am the only one who gleans any benefit." But before I could regain my thoughts, the girl reappeared at my side, eyes wide with fear and lingering hope. "We have to try? Please." Her small voice pierced through the chaos. The villagers had started to close in, their numbers overwhelming, but their bravery dulled under the weight of uncertainty. "Hey," I called to the girl, my voice desperate for understanding. "What do you have in mind?" I knelt beside her once more, searching for the fire that burned inside her gut. "They're scared," she insisted, her voice trembling. "We just have to show them we can be brave too." There was a flicker of belief in her eyes, casting light where darkness loomed. For a split second, I felt the tide shift, the tightness in my chest loosened slightly. Just then, the widow shouted, "Take whatever you want from me." His vulnerable breath poured into the air, echoing the sorrow that embraced him as arms reached toward the woman. "Double it. Please, just let her go." The rival's eyes glimmered with intrigue. "Double? Quite the gamble, my friend," he mocked, tracing the dagger across the open air. The mercenaries shifted, a tangible tension twisting through their ranks. Like a venomous serpent, they hung close to their master's every whim. Just as I felt my heart plummet once more, the girl tugged gently on my sleeve. "If he really loves her, he'll do anything," she whispered, her voice steady and profound against the backdrop of turmoil. Love's the most powerful thing, right? She was right, her innocence infusing the air with possibility, and something deeper tugged at my heart. Then we fight for that love, I said, determination blossoming and blending with the anger now bubbling in my chest. We will stand together. Suddenly, thunderous footsteps echoed beyond the clearing, the ground trembling beneath us. Murmurs and gasps rippled through the crowd, and I spun around as a new threat emerged from the shadows. It wasn't just the mercenaries closing in, here was a battalion of soldiers arriving, traveling fast, and their banners bore an emblem that sent a chill through me. The crest of the rivals' true Lord No. I gasped, the realization crashing into me like a tidal wave of despair. We were not merely fighting one rival, our struggle had escalated into a war far beyond our village. What had started as a gamble for love had morphed into something far more insidious, and the stakes continued to rise. Prepare yourselves, the rival shouted, a demonic glee flashing in his eyes. The real game is about to begin. Grab that woman. She'll make a lovely prized as the rival's men swarmed. My heart thudded with uncertainty. We were faced not only with the tragedy unfolding in front of us, but the haunting specter of a lost battle, of lost lives. The girl's presence, however, stood firm, an unyielding reminder of our purpose. In that moment, I realized we had a choice: either bend under the pressure of the incoming soldiers, or stand defiantly against the waves crashing upon us. I was uncertain, terrified, but as I looked at the little girl who faced our looming grim fate with unwavering resolve, I could feel that faint glow of hope reigniting within my heart. And just as myself and those around us braced for the storm, I was left with a dawning horror, the realization that love, choice, and sacrifice would have to battle against darkness waiting just out of sight, and for each of us, a life-altering truth was yet to unfold. With the arrival of the soldiers, the atmosphere became charged, no longer merely a conflict between our band of hope and a rival plagued by greed. Now, we were standing at the edge of an impending war, one that promised to shatter the fabric of everything we held dear. I felt the weight of despair crawl over my bones as the rivals' men swelled into formidable ranks, weapons raised, eager to strike. My heart raced, panic creeping into my chest like icy fingers as cries of alarm filled the air. I gripped the girl's small hand tighter, feeling her pulse thrum with fear, but also with unwavering courage. Everything hung on a thread: love, hope, our very lives. I turned to the villagers, their faces drawn in equal parts fear and defiance. They, like me, felt the enormity of the choice that lay before us. It was clear: we could allow ourselves to be consumed by despair or fight back with every ounce of love that had brought us this far. Gather together, I shouted, my voice rising above the din, spurred by something deep inside me, an instinct to unite in the face of impending chaos. Our love is greater than their greed. We can't let him take everything from us. We fight not just for ourselves, but for those who have been lost, and for those who will stand against fear. The villagers' eyes turned to me, flickers of recognition dancing within. In that moment, I saw the embers of courage reignite, flickering in the warmth of unity. I glanced back at the widower, stood, hollow yet determined, a testament to the love that had driven him to such depths. This was not merely a fight for one existence. It was for the essence that bound us, for love that breathed life and resilience into our shared humanity. Tears blurred my vision as I recalled the little girl's mother, her laughter, her presence, the warmth of her love lost, but not forgotten. Together, I urged once more, the words bursting forth like a primal scream. Let love guide us. We can turn this tide. The little girl stepped forward, her grip unyielding on the book still clutched to her chest, its pages battered yet resilient. We must believe, she cried, echoing my own plea with a strength that belied her size. We can be brave, just like heroes in the stories. At her words, I felt the crowd rally, a collective acknowledgement of the truth she shared. The rival and his mercenaries may have the advantage, but they lacked the very thing we now recognized as our source of power: love, a fierce force that united us in our vulnerability and turned fragility into unyielding strength. Around me, the villagers began to chant, drawing from the tales of courage passed down through generations. their voices intertwined, creating a chorus that resonated deep within. My heart surged. I could feel the resolve solidifying in the air like an electrifying current, energizing us through every beat. The rival, bemused by our sudden emergence of unity, scoffed and barked commands. But as they surged forward, we stood as one, an unbroken wall of humanity, facing the darkness descending upon us. As the first wave of the enemy approached, the villagers and I bolstered our defenses not with weapons of malice, but the spirit of our shared love. The air crackled with renewed energy, and I glimpsed glimmers of determination flash in the eyes of my comrades. Onward they came. But as we stood firm, I noticed something unexpected, a crack in the mercenaries' facade, a flicker of uncertainty in their ranks as they faced our unified front. Now, I rallied, raising my voice to expedite the momentum already surging within us. We surged forward together, our strength manifesting not just in numbers, but in our shared purpose, our love echoing louder than fear. Yet, just as hope dared to crystallize, the rival unleashed a chilling roar, and chaos reignited. He raised his dagger high, aiming directly for the girl at my side. In that split second, time dilated. I lunged forward, desperation fueling my heart. "No!" I shouted, my voice transforming into a raw, primal emotion as I threw myself in front of her, embracing her like a shield. The rival's dagger fell, but a jolt hit me. Not steel, but the impact of shattered expectations, the dreadful reality of sacrificing all we fought for. I winced at the brutal edge of fear closing in, but suddenly, a figure rushed forward. It was the blacksmith, deftly intercepting the rival's blow with a glancing strike of his own. Every ounce of strength redirected. Our community rallied behind the love we fostered, not just for the girl or for the woman held captive, but for every heartbeat tethered to hope. Bodies collided and chaos roared. Yet still, we propelled forward as shadows fled from the radiance of our collective resolve. Amidst the frantic symphony of battle, I spotted the little girl at my feet, her innocence carved into the resilience etched upon her features. She stood firm, her eyes shimmering with fervent defiance. "Love conquers all," she shouted, urging the crowd as she clutched her book tightly, its pages worn from the weight of countless stories reminding us of our strength. And so, even as despair loomed on the edges, I felt the power of unity embolden us, surging within like fire rekindled. The villagers fought alongside me, shadows becoming echoes as we leaned into each other, weaving a bond no darkness could sever. With that realization, I struck forward, and the tide began to shift. The mercenaries faltered, a realization dawning upon them that we would not be easily extinguished. Hope transformed into an undeniable force, pushing back against layers of darkness, illuminating the path forward. And then, at that very moment, as we pressed on with renewed courage, a piercing cry pierced the air, sharp as glass. Eyes widened as we collectively turned. Across the field emerged a line of villagers, allies blossoming from remnants of despair, reinvigorated by tales that echoed through the hallways of their hearts. "Let love guide us," they called, rallying around the laughter and promise of a world where kindness conquered greed, where we defined ourselves by the relationships we cultivated, not by the suffering inflicted upon us. Amidst the cacophony, I found strength, a reservoir pooling deep within, powerful and unfaltering. We were no longer fighting for survival alone. We were ushering in a new dawn where love bound us together as a shared legacy. And as the shadows receded, I found myself standing tall, bruised but unbroken, with the little girl beside me, her admiration shining brighter than any blade. In her eyes, I saw a world reborn, perhaps fragile, but thriving nonetheless. As the dust settled and the last of the rival's forces dwindled into the ether of disbelief, I looked back at my comrades. The villagers had rallied in kind, fighting not only for freedom, but for perseverance woven into kinship. In that moment of sheer vulnerability, an unbreakable promise settled in my heart. Whatever lay ahead, we would face it and perhaps, just perhaps, create a legacy of love that endured beyond the confines of despair. United, we had begun to heal, and as echoes of love ricocheted across the landscape, permanence wrapped around us like a cherished embrace, I whispered. This is just the beginning.